Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Gillian Joseph, as you have heard. I'm delighted to introduce Alex Mahon, who's over the past 4 years been the Chief Executive of Channel 4. She's fresh from her great success in having secured the deal with Amazon to broadcast the finals of the US Open Tennis Championship with Emma Raducanu's stunning victory last weekend. For the next half hour, she'll be talking to me about the challenges she faces in the light of the government's plans to privatise the channel. Welcome to you. First of all, Alex, let's start with Emma Raducanu, the joy that is Emma Raducanu, just because it is such a joyous story. How difficult was it to secure the deal, and why did you feel it was necessary to do that?
I don't know if you would describe me as fresh from that. You might describe me as like rather knackered from that and everything else that's already gone on today. But I think, as you heard earlier from others, we were in a race to get it. We didn't have any discussion about getting it as a business till between 10 and 11 a.m. on Friday morning, which even for us is like quite last minute and on the edges. And I mean, I talked to Amazon myself, I had a big team working on it. We've got a great sports and editorial team, but we didn't know we had it until after 9 p.m. on Friday night, which was spectacular. And we were coming off being exhausted from the Paralympics and Black to Front Day that we had on Friday. And then we didn't tell the public till 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. And as I think you heard, it was competitive, but we were lucky. We'd already been a partner with Amazon before. We've got a reputation for partnering with others, so people know they can trust us on that. And we also thought that we could luckily, because we're owned by the public and not for profit, we thought that luckily we could go with foregoing the ad revenue that others would have to make money on it. So we were able to pursue it. And I was so delighted because we brought it to the public. Lots of people who maybe don't have Amazon Prime or don't know how to put it on the telly were utterly delighted, particularly older people. And it felt like a really special national moment, didn't it? We had to hustle to do it, but it felt like a really special thing. So our team were cock-a-hoop with it.
Can you disclose what the sum was?
No, but you've already seen it in the press. It was a 7-figure sum. But I tell you what, Amazon have been great partners because they've donated it to women's tennis, which I think is like a brilliant thing to do. And also, I was just like, she's young, she's diverse, she's fighting against the odds. Sometimes that feels like being Channel 4. And the kind of nation loves it, And also, it's like amazing for women's sport, which is not normally what we're all reaching behind. No one was even talking about the men's final, and that's a delight to see, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
I say that with no prejudice against men whatsoever.
And you've got a history with the sport. What's the backstory with the Paralympics? I saw a post with you with Aaron Phipps, one of the gold medalists, in which you were beaming and saying that you felt so lucky to work at Channel 4. Well,
yeah, we've done like 2 big homecoming events for the Paralympians. We had a big welcome back for them on Monday in the House of Commons, actually, and then we did an event the week before for the first batch back at Japan House. And obviously Channel 4 took the Paralympics in 2012, so I'm inheriting it. There was a team before me who worked on it. But this year, it was the hardest it's ever been, because obviously we didn't know if it was going to go ahead. The team who had to work on it worked in the most difficult conditions, crazy testing protocols, and obviously we were completely separate from the Japanese population. So it was like the games against all odds. I was lucky enough to go out there for sort of a whistle-stop 48 hours, so I really did experience that firsthand. But that made it even more special because every Paralympian is an elite sports person, but also has their own personal journey. So when you meet them and you see the struggle they have to compete, particularly this year, it's amazing. And then for Channel 4 is a very special thing there. Just as NBC is the biggest for the Olympics worldwide, little old Channel 4 is the biggest for the Paralympics worldwide. So we put out every sport, we had 16 streams, we had 1,300 hours, our share was up. And when you go there, every athlete knows that it's Channel 4 that is the global center for Paralympic broadcasting. And we're lucky we can do that, right? Because it's not a profitable event, but it does make a massive difference. The reason I was so happy to welcome the Paralympians back is when you talk to them, they're so proud of what we've done in the UK, and they're so proud of the fact that in the UK, they believe that disability, although it still has a long way to go, prejudices and preconceptions need to be challenged still, but they believe that the disabled people in the UK are treated much better because of the Paralympics. So that's why it's like best day at the office.
And programmes like The Last Leg are a spin-off from your coverage.
Yeah, The Last Leg and the team who did Rio, I think in 2016, were finding presenters. There's a really long pipeline you need to develop for disabled talent on screen and off screen. So we have over 70% of our presenters this year were people with a disability, and then we are also off screen in the production crews developing a whole pipeline of disabled talent. That takes a long time, but it's really important to do to change people's point of view.
Let's get on to the subject that many people are discussing when they think of Channel 4, the government talking about privatising Channel 4 and removing your not-for-profit status. What difference would that actually make to viewers?
Well, I think we're going to have after this someone from the DCMS. By Zoom, I understand, but someone will definitely be available to talk about it. So look, the government's obviously launched a consultation about the future of Channel 4. It's probably well known that there are mixed views about that. I would say the things I definitely agree on are we want Channel 4 to be protected for the future and stronger for the future. So I think that's a shared objective with government, is how do we strengthen Channel 4. I think the government's asked the question, do we want Channel 4 to stand still? Definitely not. I don't want Channel 4 to stand still. None of us do. In fact, I'd argue that we're moving faster than plenty of the other broadcasters in the world. We've got a massive transition to digital, so I think those are shared objectives. I think where we're not perhaps on the same page is the question of, is Channel 4 better protected in terms of delivering its remit if it's sold into private ownership, or is it more able to do that and more sustainable in its method of doing that if it remains in public ownership? And that's probably where there's a difference of opinion. Why is there a difference of opinion? Because I see, my team sees, and most of the experts in this room who've all given submissions say that there is no data and there's no evidence as yet that Channel 4 would be more able to sustain that mission and that remit and its delivery of social impact and its support of the indies and the creative community in 10 years' time if it was in private hands.
But what difference would it make to viewers?
Well, to viewers or to indies?
Viewers.
To viewers. Well, I think it would make a difference in a few ways. It would, a lot of programming that we do right now that's not commercially sustainable wouldn't be there. So I don't believe that the tennis would have been there on Saturday night. I don't believe that the Paralympics would be there at the scale that we do it at. There are all kinds of other shows that probably wouldn't exist. It's a Sin that we had on this year wouldn't exist, was rejected by every commercial broadcaster. A massive show impacting to the rate of 3 times when people got tested for HIV. I don't think that the Black to Front day that we did on Friday, which was about all black fronted programming all day, but more to the point about all black crews and changing that impact on the industry, would be on screen. And then lots of things that are a little bit more nuanced about the how we make things, the how we cast Bake Off, the how we make Dispatches, the how we do lots of shows which put public purpose and social impact at their heart in terms of the way we make decisions and the way we consider them. You wouldn't do them because they're not necessarily profitable right away. You wouldn't break new talent. That's not profitable. If we look at what the streamers are doing, they go and get established talent. They leave it to people like us to go and break them. And you certainly wouldn't put loads of money and loads of offices and loads of jobs all over the UK outside of London and support the creative sectors in all those areas.
But are you assured by promises that even if Channel 4's ownership status changed in the event of a sale, it would remain a public service broadcaster? That's the assurance that the government has
I
given.
think you can definitely have public service quotas and things you have to fill. Of course, we see ITV, which is different for profit and return to shareholders, do that. You can definitely do that. The question is to what degree you can do it. You know, as you'll have seen the government saying perhaps we'll have to put in place a small and medium indie quota, perhaps we'll have to put in place regional quotas, perhaps we'll have to put in place publisher broadcaster status remaining, perhaps we'll have to put in place this, put in place that. If you have to do all that, why bother selling it in the first place? You know, you can't have your cake and sell it. What's the point? Or if I was going further with that, you know, is it worth calories to do that? Is it worth the price? You know? Or I've got another bake-off analogy, which is it feels like it's something with a rather soggy bottom. If you go to the point where you put all of that in place to do it, then why do it? You know, I guess there's questions about that. Now that is what the government will be analysing. Somebody we'll be analysing in the DCMS, probably starting tomorrow, once the first day briefs are written, which is, what's all the evidence that's come in? You know, you've heard a lot today from many of the people in this room and Richard Sharp about what should happen. And the question is, when we go through the analysis, what's the point of view of the industry? What's the point of view of the advertisers? From what we've seen as an industry, there's not a lot of appetite for it.
But you do agree that Channel 4 can't stand still and needs to move forward?
Completely think it
In which
shouldn't stand
ways
still.
would it be moving?
Well, the biggest transition by far for us, and for any broadcaster that is advertiser funded, is to move to digital. You know, the audience is all viewing streaming. People want to watch stuff when they want to watch it, where they want to watch it. They want to self-schedule. We know that. We know that's the rise in Amazon and Netflix, etc. So the big onus on us is how fast we can switch our business to digital. And the truth is, luckily, we're doing that faster than anyone else. You know, our revenues will grow 19% this year. It's not a business in trouble. Our digital revenues will grow 32% this year. We've already got a bigger share of digital revenues than anyone in the market. Our streaming growth in terms of viewer behavior is 30% this year. We're in really good shape.
You'll say you're doing this faster than anyone else. Where's the evidence for that?
With those numbers. If you compare them to market, we've got 19% digital advertising this year, market's 12%. You know, we're ahead of market. Now, we're fortunate to be able to do that because we don't have to make a shareholder return every year. We're able to do that because we have different pressures on us than others do.
I mean, at the moment, you don't make, you're not allowed to make your own programs. What impact would that have were you sold?
Yeah, look, so I've worked, before I took up this not as easy as I thought it might be job, I have worked in the commercial sector like for 20 years. So I've like run companies for profit and sold them. So that's kind of where I come from, is doing that. And if I were doing that with this business, I would remove the publisher broadcaster status, which doesn't allow us to own rights. You know, so if you look at our competitors who have more freedoms, that's what they do. That's a perfectly acceptable strategy for pursuing profit. And I would deal with less suppliers. Like we dealt with 274 suppliers last year. Channel 4's business, and the reason the publisher broadcaster status was put in place, is to be here as an innovator that incubates other businesses. We earn about $1 billion a year, we spend about $1 billion a year. The vast majority of that money is spent on small businesses across the UK. The benefits don't sit on our balance sheet, they sit on their balance sheets. That has been the lifeblood of the growth of the independent community, and it has been about exports to other countries. It's been about people growing those businesses, growing them to a scale, selling them. That's what I used to do at Shine. That's a brilliant model. If you talk to any indie here, well, hopefully I won't find one that disagrees, they've used Channel 4 to launch their careers and their businesses, and that's about the ownership of rights model. Now, the government spends billions elsewhere creating little incubators and trying to spend innovation money elsewhere to get businesses up and running. We're doing that, and particularly doing it across the UK in different creative clusters. So you can make a decision to do something else. Absolutely, that's the government's decision, not mine. But that has not been the purpose of Channel 4, and the impact would be felt in the independent community. I think PACT put out a big report last week, maybe it was earlier this week, it's been a long week, sort of saying it would make £3.7 billion of difference. Ampere have put out an independent report saying similar. So there are reports out there, not by us, saying that would be the impact. It would be felt in the creative community and in those creative clusters.
At the opening of the new Leeds Centre last week, you talked about regional youth and diversity initiatives. What are you going to be doing that's new?
So the big difference, there are three big differences. One is heads. You know, we've got about 400 roles out of London by the end of this year. That's really changing how we make decisions, to be honest, because it means every creative decision, when it's made, has someone, at least one person in it, saying, that might work well in London, but it won't work here. So it changes the flavor, if you like, of what's on the channel. It changes where we invest money. So about 50% of our qualifying spend this year will be spent outside of London. We're hitting that target 2 years early. So that changes what's on telly, how it's made, what the perspectives are of the people that are making it, but it also changes how the money's spread across the country. So that small and medium businesses. And then we've got a big digital business in Leeds, which is about 80 people now. So all of our social content is made there. That's a big growth area for us in terms of revenue. And then we start the news multiple nights a week later this month from outside of London, co-hosted. Now, that hasn't been done on national news before. So that's kind of differences it makes. That takes time. You know, anyone who's grown an indie will know it takes time to get up and running. But I think that will make a real difference to our creative industries, if we're allowed to keep doing it.
And speaking to diversity initiatives, of which you mentioned previously, Black to Front, what's the end game with that? The day was fantastic. The output that was put out was brilliant. But what happens after that day?
It was a great day. We were talking before, I was so happy to watch Big Breakfast. And I watched it back later that night, and my kids were like, was this kind of nuttiness really on telly in the mornings when you were a kid? Look, it was a very special energy day, and it wasn't without controversy before it went out, right? But actually, the reaction on the day was wholeheartedly positive. I certainly found particularly affecting not just the programs, but the fact that we had 55 advertisers we worked with, and every advertising spot was fronted by Black talent. And that felt quite monumental in terms of the lineup of the day. But look, the impact is not really about a day, is it? You know, anyone could do that. It's about the legacy, which we've yet to announce in a few weeks. It's about the ongoing shows that were series that came. But I think more profoundly, it's about the fact that it is now obvious to everyone that there's talent out there, right? So the excuse of we can't find them is gone, because we also had crews behind the scenes that were Black. That was the big difference. And we've worked with loads of production companies as to how do you crew up and find people who are not in your normal network? How do you widen the group that you go for? I think those are the impacts. But the onus is on us, of course, to keep doing that and work out how we keep making more shows like that. But it's definitely busted the myth that there isn't talent there.
But what is the specific action that you'll be taking?
We'll announce in a few weeks what the action plan is, because we haven't finalised that yet, because we're still getting the feedback from the learnings. But I think it has to be on us of what's the permanent changes we're going to make. We already have, as you know, what the targets are for staff, what the targets are in terms of crews, what the targets are for our most senior staff. But I think it's got to be about what we do in production.
In the context of that, I wonder if you could comment on bringing back changing rooms with a...
Have you watched it? I mean, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen has aged better than I thought.
but it is
still in leather trousers, maybe a slightly larger size.
But it is with an all-white presenting lineup, though.
Yeah, but it's a varied mix of participants in it as well. I mean, I think you've got to, you know, we've got a huge range of shows, right? So you've got to make sure that you've got a mix across the shows, and that's part of what Black to Front showed as a day. Is you can also create that in any particular show, but always the onus on us to try and work harder to do that.
Now, Channel 4 turns 40 this autumn. Will it still be financially sustainable by the time it's 50, or is it in danger of having a midlife crisis?
I think we're like pretty busy. I don't know if we've got time for a midlife crisis. And I'm not sure that we'll get to have enough rest in between rounds of what should happen to us next to have one. Look, we are financially sustainable. We're going to grow our revenues to 1.1 billion this year, I think. You know, as you'll have heard from others, advertising is having a massive resurgence, and television is doing very well. Digital advertising and television is doing very well. We are now into growth phase, which is excellent because we've made that big switch to digital. We've got balance sheet of over £500 million. We've got a couple of $100 million in cash. We've made profits for the past couple of years, and we'll continue to do this year. We're in a good place. You know, we survived the pandemic, which was the worst possible business situation that any of us have ever been in, and I hope that any of us will ever be in again. So yes, I think we will be. The questions for us are all about continued switch to digital, keeping up as the young people's broadcaster. You know, that's what we're really, really successful at. And then making sure that we partner with people. That we've always been about partnership. The Amazon deal was about partnership. We've always been too small to do everything on our own, right? So that's got to be about partnership and how we work with others. If we maintain a very strong brand and that appeal to young people, and if we keep commissioning shows that fit with that, then yeah, I think we'll be okay.
But Channel 4 won't just be competing with ITV and Sky for ad revenue. It'll also be the streamers, the tech giants. Is there space?
Well, there's definitely space, because like people are spending more media and viewing more media. There's definitely space, but they're not easy competition. They're not easy competition for any of us, but we've all been competing with them. we've all been competing with them successfully. There is particular appetite in the UK for British content from British brands. And we talked about that a little bit today, although I know we got caught up in Scottishness and Welshness. But there is an appetite in this country for strong public service media, and I think that will continue to be so. There is also an appetite for what Netflix do, but there's an appetite for both, and all we see is media consumption increasing.
Do you see your size as a disadvantage or an advantage?
No, I see it as an advantage. Like when we talked about tennis, we're small. So we're agile, so we're able to do that. Quite often that's an advantage to us. There are other times when it's a disadvantage, but it's about playing to our strengths wherever we can.
Okay, we've spoken for a bit, and we're going to, in RTS tradition, open up the floor, which you're happy to do, and take some questions. Just raise your hand, and a microphone will come to you if you'd like to pose a question to Alex. This lady at the front here. Please say your name and where you're from before you ask the
Hello,
question.
Tara Conlan, here for the RTS, also write for The Guardian, broadcast, etc. Alex, with Nadine Dorries becoming Culture Secretary and having appeared on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, I think she might be the first Culture Secretary to have done that.
It's very good for ITV.
It's very good. I just wondered what your thoughts were on her announcement regarding the privatisation.
Yeah, I mean, it won't surprise you to know that I haven't had masses of time to analyse it. But, she certainly knows something about television. Right? Assuming she knows something about production. But honestly, I haven't really had time to digest it, and perhaps neither has she.
Another question? Can't believe you're such a shy
Right at the back.
There we go. Just gentleman to your right, just here with his hand up. Oh, there's one at the back.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, hello, I'm Alex Farber from Broadcast Magazine. Alex, I wonder if there's a point in time at which you start considering what the least worst option for Channel 4 looks like under privatisation, and if you've got any thoughts about who a good steward of the business could be in the eventuality that privatisation does proceed.
Well, I think we've got to wait till the consultation responses have even been read, and then work with the DCMS as to where they want to go. I mean, that's the phase we're now in. As you know, the consultation only closed last night. Everyone's put their responses in, and now we've got to work with the DCMS, as you would expect, to go through that and go, well, what's their opinion? What's the data? What's the evidence? What could the options be? I mean, that's what will happen next over the next couple of months.
Gentleman there, fourth.
Yes, Hal. Thank you. John McVeigh from PACT. Thanks, Alex. Yes, it'll be interesting to see what the new Culture Secretary makes of all of this.
I don't think we've ever had a reshuffle live at the RTS, have we? We've had people come late.
Well, at RTS we've had a no-show.
We had a no-show, yeah.
But not a reshuffle, so it's a first for RTS. Well done. Alex, you touched on a bit there, and the questioning there about out of London, and clearly that's one of the things we are deeply worried about. If Channel 4 was to be sold off and whoever bought it was allowed to develop in-house production. Because for many of my members out of London, Channel 4 is the first place they go to. And I'm working with it's PAC's 30th anniversary this year, and we're working with a small aspirational company in Middlesbrough who have built up a very good business, and they're doing some video and programming for us. But they're exactly the company where you're their most natural buyer. You're the ones who they think they can have a pop at. Not the BBC, because the BBC won't take a pitch from you unless you've already made a programme. They've not yet made a programme. And I think I'd like to hear more from you, given you did work in production, about what that feels like when the door's closed, where the opportunities aren't there anymore.
Well, and if I was running a company for profit, you'd do it differently, right? That's not wrong. You just do it differently. But we see, and it's mandated to us, that part of our job is to build the creative economy and the creative clusters across the UK. And that means, one, we take pitches from everybody, like everybody gets response, although I know in your other surveys it says that email responses are often not what they could be. But they do, and we see that as part of our role. And it also means that we have quite a lot of people who work in a nurturing way with how do you get those pitches to the right point. We have the Alpha Fund, the Emerging Indie Fund, we have a fund where we invest in bigger indies, the Growth Fund, and that is all about how you get companies to the next stage. And that takes without being condescending, it can take a phase of hand-holding. It can take a phase of working with companies to get them to the point where they're bigger businesses, where they're medium-sized businesses, and often when they then scale. That's quite an important role in our industry because it keeps the barriers to entry low. Otherwise, what happens is you sell your business, it gets bought, that's what happened to Shine, it gets bought again, it gets bought by Endemol, and then it gets bought by Banjay. They're really big things, they're very successful, but they're very, very different to nurturing the small and the medium. And it's the nurturing of the small and the medium that brings new voices into the industry. And that change that we're in now, the shift that we're in now is how do you get those new voices to be from everywhere across the UK. And another thing we do that, again, I probably wouldn't do if I was running it for profit is, we just announced last week that we're going to train 15,000 people a year. That's another 5 million in training. All of those people are from socially disadvantaged backgrounds or from out of London. Those are like schemes that we do with the DWP and job centres. That's about bringing young people into the industry who would never get a chance to come into the industry, or who would never believe that they could if it's all like done in London. So those are parts of the roles we play. You can make a different decision of what you want Channel 4 to do. That's not my decision, but those are the consequences of making that decision.
Peter York from the Media Society. The consultation which ended last night was multiply weird. It mainly consisted of, has Channel 4 stopped beating its wife type questions with very, very odd preambles. I think everybody who looked at it was rather taken aback at the nature of it. And for somebody like me, who does analysis of things like that, I thought the results are going to be almost impossible to analyse by anybody, except possibly a Whitehorse Bad. So, have you had any intimation of what the analysis process is to be, and how you're going to hear the quotes unquotes results?
No.
Rather what I thought.
That is the final question, I'm afraid. Just one more question for Alex.
I thought it was done.
No, this is just, well, it's not really, it's a general question because we've got John Whittingdale coming up, the Broadcasting Minister, coming up next on Zoom. What is the one thing that you want to say to him?
When making this decision, we should always look, everyone's got a right to their opinion, and the government has got an absolute right to examine this. And they should examine it periodically. It's an important question. But it's a question that has profound consequences for our industry, and therefore it should be examined on data and evidence.
Thank you, Alex. Up next is Ben McCowan-Wilson, who will introduce John Whittingdale. Thank you very much.